Hey guys, so we're doing things a little differently because obviously business as usual is not business as usual anymore with the coronavirus doing what it's doing to the entire sporting world and the entire world as we get ready to lock down for the next 21 days. But we thought, hey, let's see if we can use technology to get the discussion going around how this whole thing has impacted football because we haven't even been able to touch on it since it's kicked in full force. So joining me for Front Runner podcast, I have none other than John T. Mark, Christopher Bongo, and Mazola Molefe joining me on Zoom for what I hope is a good conversation and one that we can be able to exchange some thorough discussion, technology allowing. So here we go. We're going to start at the top of the page with Mazola. And we're doing things a little differently. Actually, John T, I'm starting with you. Let's start with you. We're doing things differently because we're kind of speaking to the journals about the stories that they've been discussing within their newspapers and writing and overseeing. So John T, starting with, I guess on a somewhat lighter note, Benny McCarthy being linked with Ajax. How much truth is there to that?
Well, I think it's been going on for some time, and I think there's quite a bit of truth to it, but it's very up in the air because I think Benni will only come if Ajax are in the ABSA Premiership, and obviously they're currently top of the Glad Africa Championship, but whether the season will finish at the moment is unknown, so it's a bit tricky. But Benni obviously has long-term links to that club with his time at Silver Stars. Obviously played for Ajax Amsterdam, and there might be a deal somewhere there involving the Amsterdam club in replacing the coach obviously who left in quite controversial circumstances. Although Calvin Marlin's done a very good job as a caretaker, and they're still winning by the week and getting closer and closer. Or they were getting closer and closer to promotion. Before coronavirus stepped in and threw everything up in the air. So we'll have to wait and see. But there's definitely some truth in it, and it's been a rumor circulating for some time. And I think Benni also he loves Cape Town as well. Cape Town is his home. Cape Town is where his friends and family are, and or a lot of them, although he lives in the UK. But at the moment, he loves it. He loves it there in Cape Town as well. We know that about Benni.
Okay, just to follow up on that, it seems a contradictory to hear these stories that Ajax might be pulling out, as in the Amsterdam outfit might pull out of the local outfit, considering that, if Benni wants to go there, it's because of his links. How much, is it weighing on Benni signing that they stay? Who's the big, I guess, who does the deal hinge on mostly?
No, I think there's been stories about Ajax pulling out of Ajax.
For years.
Ajax Amsterdam pulling out of Ajax Cape Town for so long now that I don't think that'll happen unless, obviously with these uncertain times, unless finances mean that they just don't see the value in it at all anymore. But I don't think they'll pull out for the time being. I very much doubt it. But again, it's very much. I think it's more dependent for me on Ajax making it into the top flight and playing top flight football next season. Benni McCarthy coached at Cape Town City. He won't want to coach in the NFD in any way. He'd probably even, I would think, rather sort of advance his career a bit in Europe, as much as he likes Cape Town. But it depends on whether there's a job there.
Right.
So I think it's more likely that he's going to. It's more on him than it is, and on Ajax Cape Town success than it is on Ajax Amsterdam staying or going. And I really don't think Ajax Amsterdam will go anywhere.
If you look at the situation now with Cape Town, Ajax Cape Town, they were literally charging towards the title. It's all stopped. We don't know when it starts again. When it starts again, how hard is it to tap into what they had to get them where they were before this crazy break?
For any footballer, when you're in emotion and they're playing almost every week, when you go from a break for you to come back, it becomes very difficult because it is basically off-season. If we look at the period that it might take, according to the medical aspect, they're saying, well, action might come back only around June. You are actually looking at a minimum of a 2 month off season, and for you to go back. And then when you go back, how long will this take? Will you be playing every 3 days? How fit are your players? I am not an expert in football. This never happened before. I am actually saying this is a mega, mega situation for promotion and relegation everywhere around the world. I'm seeing this league being nil and void. I don't see this league continuing the way it was. They tried it in Nigeria, it did not work. I don't see the action going back before end of June. I don't see that. So for me, this season is already been classified as nil and void.
Okay, well, let's speak to that then. Mozola, do we have any indication of exactly what happens should, I don't know, 2 months from now we resume? Do we have any guidelines as to how the season will be determined locally?
Yeah, I think locally there isn't sort of a template, or the NSL, the National Soccer League rules do not have any specifications around that. But I think FIFA does. I think FIFA does, have a regulation with regards to circumstances like these, natural disasters or whatever the case may be. And I think leagues around the world, including the Premier Soccer League, would have to to take their cue from the World Football Governing Body. I mean, as it is today, I received a document where FIFA obviously has put together a task team that's looking, that includes member associations, technical advisors, to look into some of the key issues, including contracts that are expiring on the 30th of June, the extension of the transfer season, and whether clubs, discussions around payments if there's no work. I mean, there's talk now of Barcelona players refusing a salary cut because they've not been at work, they've not been playing. So the club is talking to them about salary cuts, and the report I read says that the players are refusing, and it's going to be difficult, and for the league here at home, especially if you do not have a way around it, if you've never in your constitution made room for
yeah.
So it's difficult. I think everyone is in limbo. The Premier Soccer League tried to some degree to be in control with at least 2 press conferences following its executive committee meeting last week, and then its BOG meeting a few days later. But this is a situation in honestly that they are not in control of. It's not up to them. They can talk about maintaining their desire and stance to finish the current 2019-2020 season by June 30, but it's not up to them. It's entirely up to when this pandemic could be managed, controlled, and entirely up to the government as well. That's not up to the league. So I think the FIFA team is meeting again tomorrow. They've put forward some proposals that clubs maybe can put some feedback if they so wish. But I think the task team is meeting tomorrow, and then they'll have a final decision maybe by Sunday, by end of the weekend, or by sometime next week, where we could know what's to happen if leagues around the world, including the PSL, cannot finish by the set, the targeted date. So it's going to be very tricky. So I'm with Chris. I don't see this, panning out. I think it's gonna pan out. I mean, you can imagine now we're on a 21-day lockdown. Post the lockdown, it's not like everything's just gonna miraculously go back to normal. It's not like on the 16th of April the lockdown ban obviously is lifted, and on the 17th we back on the 18th, 19th we back playing again. You know what I mean? Players have to go back to training and that sort of stuff. We sort of have to ease back into it, and we have to listen to the guidelines from the government as well. So that's April pretty much gone. Then you have May, and it's really it's something that we cannot forecast. There's a wish to have this completed by the 30th of June.
Yeah.
But it's
Okay. John T, in terms of some of the clever thinking and the solutions that you've had bandied about, have you heard any, resolutions or ideas as to how to end all of this that you thought, hey, actually, that's not a bad idea?
Look, it's such a tricky situation and it's so unprecedented that I think I've heard quite a few ideas like, playing one venue, behind closed doors is obviously an idea that hasn't really worked in Europe, and that the SAFA doctor or SAFA have advised strongly against, and
right.
and I think proven that hasn't worked. It would be an option maybe if there was a guarantee from the World Health Organization that the virus was sort of more under control, but obviously it's specific to every country how under control it is, and it's really so difficult to. I think, as Mazola was saying, to say we're going to start a season on a certain date, and I do think that, I think obviously you can want, like the PSL do, and it's perfectly natural, and I'm sure every club wants to finish the season, but the practicality of it is it's going to be extremely difficult. And as Chris Bongo mentioned about, he's played football at the top level, and it's you have to have a pre-season, you have to get fit again. You can't just go and play a game tomorrow if they say the season can start tomorrow. These players will have to, for all the training regimes they might be doing at home and all that kind of thing. It's going to be very, very, very difficult for them to start the season by June the 30th. If you look at the fact that the Euros have been postponed, they basically said we can't play the Euros, and those are in July, and they've said we can't play the Olympics, and those are in August.
Yeah.
Already, tournaments way ahead of being cancelled. Obviously, that's partly due to the lack of ability to prepare for them, but it's also a sign that the domestic seasons all over the world are in trouble, and it's hard to see how they can start them. And as Mazola mentioned, we're going into a lockdown for 21 days. There's no guarantee, I would say, without wanting to fearmonger, there's no guarantee that the lockdown will be over after 21 days if the virus is still a problem. The advisors to the government still say, well, we still need to contain this, then it's going to carry on, I would think. So I just don't know how at the moment you can start the season again. And then, like I say, all these ideas, it's so unprecedented that, I mean, the real question would be, if you decide, okay, we can't play this season, let's just call it null and void, then what do you do? I mean, there's two clear options for me. One is you either say, whoever's top right now wins the league, and whoever where they are. But the problem in South Africa,
as it stands,
there's a real problem in the PSL in the sense that
games in hand.
Nobody's played the same amount of games, so
exactly.
It would be ridiculous to say that.
Right.
Or you just say,
or just play the outstanding games, maybe.
No.
To get up to a certain round. Like if everyone's on 21 and there's people behind, you get up to 21 and leave it at that.
It's still a risk to health. It's still a risk to health. That's the problem.
Yeah.
If they declare it completely null and void, then you've got, a situation where you just say, okay, this season not effectively didn't happen, but we haven't been able to play it. So we'll just go back to square one. I mean, somebody did mention to me, when you've got a team like Ajax who are top of the league, and you've got someone with the deep pockets of Arias Stafiu, who already went to court when they were relegated. I can see him going straight back there if they're not allowed to be promoted.
No, for sure.
No, but in South Africa, it's simple. In South Africa, the situation can be simple. We freeze the league as it is. The PSL is null and void, and then we start a new season with 18 teams or 19 teams, where you have IF Cape Town, number 1, number 2, number 3 get promoted. Basically, the big issue in South Africa is promotion, and you don't relegate anybody. You just add the number of teams in the PSL, and then you don't have a champion, because having a champion in PSL, there is no legal cost not having a champion. If it is a question of money, you pay number 1 money. You pay them money according to the lock situation at the moment. Mm-hmm. But we never had a champion that season. But for the case of Ajax and the team in NFD, because of the amount of money they do get, you then promote just 3 teams. So you make a league to have a league of 18 teams or 20 teams. That's what we can do.
Okay, that's some interesting thoughts there. But Mazola, before we let you go, I just want to touch on the contract situation with Leonardo Castro at Kaizer Chiefs.
Yeah.
What's the latest with that? I saw him recently in Greenside having some sushi at Momo. He looked very relaxed. Do you think he's still relaxed about his contract discussions?
Yeah, look, I think so. I think Castro really does have options. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense why he would drag the contract talks for so long. And I understand also where he's coming from. Obviously, what's been public knowledge before is that he had been on the transfer list last year in July because of the surplus to requirements. There were attempts from clubs in Morocco to get him on board, but Kaizer Chiefs wanted around 4 million to try and recuperate the transfer fee they had paid Mamelodi Sundowns to move him over to Naturena. And subsequently, he fought hard. He somehow won back favor with Ernst Middendorp and became one of the key players this season and was back in contention. And as a result, obviously his contract was coming to an end. I think obviously initially the club wanted to cash in while he still had a year left to his contract. But with his form, they felt the need to obviously offer him a new contract. And on top of that, I think the added factor was that Chiefs were then subsequently banned by FIFA for 2 transfer windows. And that means obviously if Castro leaves, they can't get in a like replacement.
Right.
I think, it plays in his favor, but we know before that Chiefs, have said they will not be held at ransom by players who are making, certain demands.
Did they say that before or after the transfer ban?
No, before in 2015, when you remember the case with Itumeleng Khune.
Yes.
But I think this case is a bit different. I've not been given the impression it was made ridiculous demands, although it does seem that he has possibly asked for a little bit more than what Chiefs were offering. Because remember, he had rejected a contract offer initially around February or even maybe earlier. He declined to sign a new contract, and then he tabled his own proposal, which is what is being discussed at the moment. And maybe the club can come find common ground with the player, because at the same time he has also turned down offers from North Africa as well. So that gives you the impression that he's not quite yet decided where he wants to play his football next season. But I think Chiefs will try harder to persuade him to stay, because even because of the COVID-19 now, their appeal from has to have the ban of the transfer ban overturned has now been delayed. Means potentially the new season could kick off, and that ban hasn't been overturned, even with the transfer window extended because of what is happening around the world at the minute. So it's a tough one, but I'll probably be one to argue that Castro is a little bit relaxed because he is probably weighing his options carefully, especially in light of the fact that less than a year ago the club wanted to sell him.
Let's hop on to George then, because this is interesting with George. This literally was the whole thing about him signing with Sundowns came out on the eve of a match. Like, we were still going to see if he was going to be in that team sheet come before kickoff, after the news of him moving to Sundowns. And obviously that didn't happen because football got scrapped and all the great games got called off. But that's going to be an interesting one to see. It was interesting in that were Chiefs going to be professional and continue with him, regardless of him moving to Sundowns. And now it becomes even more interesting because obviously his contract is going to end and we don't know what happens around there. So what's happening with George Maluleka?
Yeah, look, I think, knowing Ernst from, our interactions as the media, and just generally how he carries himself in terms of the work that he puts in, I think he would probably be professional enough to still want to play him, because I think if you look back to the Hendrik Ekstien case as well, it was pretty much similar as well, where the coach carried on playing XTN, even though the player had rejected several attempts from the club to get him to sign a new contract. And eventually he was left out of the team after, I think it was an instruction from management for coach not to play him, because he had now made it clear that he doesn't want to be at Kaizer Chiefs, and therefore he would be leaving the club. And as a result, his contract was actually terminated, I think, a month or two before the end of the season, and before it eventually was going to run out. I think George is a pretty similar case, but it's different now because they are actually in contention to win the title. They're top of the log, 4 points clear with a couple of games to go, and George is a key player, and he's one of the vice captains at the club, and he's been, Middendorp has himself labeled him a core player when he was trying to urge him and the club to speedily conclude contract talks after the Soweto derby, beating Pirates. And just a few weeks after that, obviously the club has since now announced that he's opted to take up I think a 3-year contract at Mamelodi Sundowns instead of the 2-year option, the 2 years plus 1 year option Kaizer Chiefs were said to be offering him. So look, I think Ernst will be professional enough to want to play him, but ultimately, like the XTN case, the decision lies with management. And with regards to his the June 30th dateline, I just done a story this afternoon because of that FIFA internal document that says they are proposing that contracts that were going to run out June 30th be amended to when the season actually does end. For instance, if the season goes on until the 30th of July or the 1st of August, that means George's contract would then expire at the end of that season, not necessarily as per calendar date. So, he, according to that FIFA proposal, George could still be at Chiefs or will be a Chiefs. If that regulation is passed, George will be a Chiefs player until the season is actually comes to an end. Whether he plays is another thing, because that's entirely up to Ernst and obviously the management.
Gents, anyone want to chime in on that one?
Well, it's the only, I think with what Mazol is saying about the contract situation, it's the only really viable option in terms of what you can do, is to say the player stays with that club until their specific season ends.
Right.
Because that's the gist of June the 30th anyway, is to say, like, until the end of the season, you're our player, and then you can move on, or so be it. So I think that's 100% that they have to do that. All leagues kind of have to accept that. But I think, we were at the PSL BOG meeting, and I spoke to Jessica Motal, and Jessica seemed to have conceded basically that Maluleka is gone. I don't really a debate about whether he's gone to Sundowns or not. I think he will be a Sundowns player next season, even though Pitzer Mosamani is still playing mind games over it. But I think George will go, and I think he's been quite a key player for Chiefs this season, and I think it would be sort of cutting off your nose to spite your face a bit not to play him in the title run-in when you're vying with a big club like Sundowns for the league. I think it would be the Chiefs are obviously very pissed off with Sundowns that it happened, but I think it would be silly to drop Maluleka for the rest of the season, and I don't think Middendorp will want to do that. Middendorp's always sort of played his best, the players he wants to play, regardless of their contract situation. So I would say he should. I would say the club should just let George, play out the season if the season happens.
Cool. Okay. Perfect.